I just recorded this whole vlog and I feel like I was talking way too fast. So I'm gonna take a moment. I have a question for all of you. If you could leave a comment and tell me, what's the difference between a vlog and a podcast? I've been trying to figure this out for a while. I feel like in my mind, a podcast was always auditory only. It was the thing you listened to on Spotify or on the podcast app on your iPhone. And now it seems like people are calling podcasts things they do on YouTube, and I would call those vlogs. What's the difference? I'm really not sure, and I'm very curious what people think about this and where we stand on a podcast versus a vlog. I don't know that it really matters. I'm just really curious. So, I was watching the Hey Brownberry vlog podcast thing. She calls it a podcast. Hey Brownberry, she comes on that screen and she says, "It's podcast day. It's podcast day." And my blood pressure immediately goes down. And I feel so safe and comforted. I know that she's going to take me to a peaceful place and we're going to talk about yarn and we're going to maybe talk about gardening and nature and weather, and it's just going to be a really pleasant half hour, 45 minutes. I just adore her. She's really sweet. She's really calming. She's very good for my potential blood pressure issues. She's just really great. So I wanted to say that because on an episode that I was watching of hers recently, I don't think it was her most recent one. I think I'm 2 episodes behind right now. At least maybe 1, maybe 2. I don't know. But she was talking about how we often feel like we need a finished product to show or a finished project to show when we do these sort of things. When we put ourselves out on the internet like this, or when we're sharing on Instagram, we feel like we need a finished project. And it really got me thinking about how that takes away from the value of the journey. And how if we're only looking at the finished product all the time, we're really not getting that full feeling of what it's like to go through this crafting journey, this art journey. And so it really inspired me to want to share more of the journey with you, more of the steps toward the end result, rather than just sharing the end result. But I do want to go back in time first. We're going to travel backward a little bit to last month, where I showed you a hat. Or I talked about a hat, but I couldn't show it to you because I couldn't find it. I found it. Somehow it had gotten down in between the couch cushions, where everything gets lost, right? So I was cleaning my living room the other day, and I picked up a throw pillow on the couch because I was kind of wiping down for cat hair and dog hair, with a lint roller. And I picked up this throw pillow, and I saw this little piece of black yarn, and I realized that it was that hat. And now that I am upstairs in my studio to do this vloggy podcast thing, the hat is downstairs. So I'm going to insert some B-roll footage here of this hat because for the life of me, I cannot get it into my studio for this video. But I did just want to be able to show you what I was talking about last time about the drape of this fabric. It's that alpaca from Wool and the Gang. It's really soft. It's really squishy. It balls up really tight. If I took this whole hat and I balled it up into a teeny tiny little ball, I'm pretty sure it would be a quarter of the size of all my other hats. It just is really, but it's a worsted weight yarn. Or maybe it was a DK. I don't know. It was not fingering weight, that I know. It's just a really interesting fabric that came out of this yarn. And then the green yarn is fiber seed, which way in wool. So I like that combination. I really like how light it is. It's a hat that I could really wear in the spring or fall as opposed to winter. Although I think I could wear it in the winter as well because it's pretty warm when I need it to be. I don't know. It's just a really great hat. I'm so in love with this hat. And I'm so glad that I found it, finally. So I did want to show you that. And then the only other thing that I finished in May was I finished 2 Rebel Alliance hats in a super chunky yarn. So if you look at the pattern, that's on stitchandwitch.com for the Rebel Alliance hat. This one's a free pattern because I don't want to pay Star Wars trademark fees. I think everybody needs a Rebel Alliance hat. So I've had this pattern listed for a really long time. And I don't know any of it, and you can use it for whatever you want, or use that chart for whatever you want. Somebody else I know on, I think it was on my Ravelry, commented, or on Ravelry under the pattern, commented that they'd used it for a completely different project. They'd used it like they used the chart on the back of a sweater or something. It sounded awesome. I was really happy about that. But yeah, so I've knit quite a few of these Rebel Alliance hats. I've knit, I'd say at least 5 or 6 over the couple of years since I created the pattern. But I did these ones with this really super chunky yarn to make a bigger hat. One for my nephew, Alec, who has a lot of very thick, very curly hair. And I wanted something that would go over his afro. So I did that one for him. And then one for, I should get him to send me a picture of himself in it. And then one for my spouse that I did in the non-binary flag colors. Those are the only things I finished in the month of May. Today, as I record this, is June 2nd. Yesterday, on June 1st, I mostly finished this rainbow blanket. I still need to tie in my ends, or weave in a few ends. I've woven in quite a few, but I need to weave in the rest. This is just a scrap blanket. I'm working on kind of these scrap yarn blankets for my nieces and nephews. This is for my niece Kaylee, and I'm just kind of doing like one at a time. And eventually all of them will have blankets. There's a lot of them, so it's gonna take a long time, but I figure I'll go family by family. I'll do Kaylee, Adrian, and Jillian, who are my brother's 3 children, first, and then move on to the next set. So that's not quite finished, but it will be by like tomorrow when I finish weaving in those ends. So those are my finished things. Let's talk about what's on the needles, and then we'll talk about what's going on the needles next. If you're on my Facebook, you will have seen in the last day or so a post from me about a really bad dentist situation that I had a couple of days ago. And I realized this morning, as I was gathering up my projects to bring them all up here to talk about them, I realized that I have not touched this project since that dentist appointment, which I'm really mad about. So I'm going to light some incense and do a little like moment of kind of cleansing this project, I think. Because I think I'm associating it with that dentist appointment, which is really frustrating because I literally did 30 stitches on it. That's it. I did one of the pattern side of the socks. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So these are my yoga socks that I'm working on. I didn't even do the full 30 stitches. Look at that, I'm only halfway. This is what I knit at the dentist's office. Whoop, those stitches, that little row. But these are my yoga socks that I'm working on. I don't have a pattern for these. I cast on 60 stitches on my size, I think these are size 2s. I'm alternating with yarn overs for this kind of 3-2, 3-2, 3-2 kind of lacy section there. I've got it going on the outside edge of each sock. So on the outside of the right side, I'll have it, and on the outside of the left, you know what I mean, on the outside edge. So I literally, that's all I did was that like little bit of stitches, but that dentist situation that day was really negative. It was an extremely upsetting situation. That I've actually made a formal complaint to the main dental people about. So I think I'm associating that dentist appointment with that project, or associating that project with that dentist appointment, something like that. And I think I need to take a moment with that project and kind of cleanse it and clear my own mind around it. So I'm going to do that this afternoon so that I can get back to work on that. That yarn is bamboo. It's my first time working with a bamboo yarn, and I'm absolutely loving it. I don't know if I can get this to show up, but you should see how adorable these little tiny stitches are. Let's see if I can get it to focus on it. I'll do a photo because I don't think that in video mode the camera is going to focus on it well. But just these stitches are just so adorable. Like, that's all I can think is there's something about the twist to this yarn that just makes the stitches look so pretty and uniform, and I just love them. So I'm really excited about those socks. I think I've talked about them before. I live in a very old house with hardwood floors. I do yoga early in the morning. Every morning I do 10 minutes of yoga when I first wake up every morning, and my feet are always freezing. Especially like the air conditioner kind of blows right to the spot that I do yoga in. Just by chance, that's where my yoga mat fits on the ground. So yeah, I'm really excited to have those for my early morning yoga pretty soon, which is another reason that I'm really upset that I'm associating them with this horrible dentist, because they're gonna be part of my like daily spiritual routine. Like my morning yoga routine includes meditation, and that is part of my spiritual routine. And the fact that I'm associating those with him makes me really mad, because he was really bad. So I'm gonna do a cleansing thing. I'm gonna fix that. I friend everybody on Facebook, so if you haven't friended me over there, you could come friend me, and then you can see, although it's a public post, you can find me there. Katrina Ray-Saulis, just find me. I have like a writer's page that's also under Katrina Ray-Saulis that I never post to, but then you can find my actual personal page. So I have that on the needles. I have still, and again, and always, my scrappy sock yarn blanket. This will be on my needles for the next 2 decades probably, before it's big enough. I want it to actually be big enough to cover a king size bed. Although I said that when I first made it, and now I have a queen size bed. I had a king size bed then. I love this project because I remember all of these yarns and what they're for. Like this one right here, my sister was dating this guy who really liked the snitch yellow, so I made him a pair of socks with it. This is the purple of the scarf that I wear when I do lobbying at the State House, because it's like my union's color. This is the blue of my Hermione's everyday socks that I wear all the time. They're probably my favorite pair of socks.
Editing Katrina here. Just here to tell you that as I edit this video, I am wearing those socks.
Blue is from one of my TARDIS projects. Like, I love that I know where all of these came from. This brown I did for a really good friend of mine, my friend Joseph. I just love that I have like these kind of memories in them. This was actually the first pair of fingering weight socks I ever did. That's a Malabrigo. And I did this kind of cabled heart pattern up the front, and I have torn them. They've been mended and and patched so many times that I've basically given up on them. They're actually in my closet over here in my studio because I'm trying to figure out what to do with them next. But anyway, yeah, so I love that all those yarns, like I have these memories with them all. And one day that will be kind of a keepsake that I can pass on to, I don't know, a niece or nephew or somebody, whoever I end up passing on my things to one day. I love that I have that. Last time I talked about how I had a secret project for a friend. I have now told that friend that I'm working on it because I can't keep my mouth shut, so it's no longer a secret. I cast on another wingspan shawl. Ta-da! For my friend Rainbow. She's one of my best friends. She asked me for this in 2020. But this is such a complex pattern. I bought the yarn way back then when she asked in the colors that she wanted. But it's such a complex project that I just hadn't gotten back around to working on it yet, because I needed to kind of clear my head. Plus I've got like my own design projects going, and this one, it just takes some extra brain power. I don't know if, I think I did a video just about the wingspan shawl, but I do want to show you one of the things I do with this shawl pattern that I did last time too. I printed off a new copy. I know it's a waste of paper, but I have to work on paper, and so I print a new copy each time. Whatever. But I get really specific about how I mark up this pattern. So I have it color-coded for certain things, like the cable, I think it's called a cable slip, so it's the CSSK, the SSKs, the M1Ls. Like I have each has a color. So there's the kind of code. I've color-coded them all with my zebra mild liners. And then the other thing I do is I have a little arrow sticky post-it, but now I've just lost my place. And as I do each line, I check it off. And if it's a line I'm going to do multiple times, it'll end up with multiple checks. Like you can see that right here. Da-da, da-da, multiple checks. So that I always know where I am in the pattern. Partly because I would get lost and I'd have no idea. just in general, but also because I do tend to have so many projects going at once, and I pick one up and I put it down and I go back and forth, and I really need that kind of focus. Like, I really need to know where I'm at in my patterns. I have cast on, in the month of May, I spent quite a bit of time sitting next to the hospital bed of a very, very close relative who I adore greatly, who's a very private person, so I won't really like share their information, but I ended up sitting next to their hospital bed every day for about a week. And I cannot work on difficult projects in that environment, so the wingspan shawl got set aside, and I ended up working on that rainbow scrap yarn blanket instead, because that's just how that works, and those Rebel Alliance hats. So I need to get back to the wingspan shawl. I will definitely get back to that in the next probably 2 days. And then I think that's everything I have on the needles at the moment, but I do want to talk about what I have coming up. So I picked up from the library, I don't really buy knitting books very often, because usually there's only like 3 patterns I actually want in them. So I'll check them out of the library, do the ones I want, and return them. I picked up this one, French Girl Knits, by Christine Griffin Grimes. I may actually buy this one. I love every pattern in this book. Her patterns there's a lot of cables, which I love. There's not a lot of color work, which is great because I don't love a lot of color work. Like, I'm really a cable girl. But it has this one headscarf. This is actually, but I mostly got it for this headscarf. It's called the Jasmine headscarf. Oh, it looks like they did it in Barocco glint. 2 skeins, it says. I hope I have enough of this. I think I have a second skein of this one, but if not, this one I know I can get a second skein of. I'm going to do it in this Lion Brand Heartland in the Kings Canyon green. It's very much my green. It goes with my entire wardrobe. I'm really excited to have that to wear, especially later this summer. I feel like it's going to be really good at like the end of summer. So I'm going to cast that on soon. I have that kind of sitting in my knitting bag waiting to be cast on. It has a provisional cast on, which is not my favorite thing. Anybody who's watched any of my Jughead hat videos knows that I'm not a big fan of provisional cast-ons, and it has a provisional cast-on, and I think that's literally the only reason I'm procrastinating on casting it on, which is really stupid. So I need to just get on that. So I've got that one. I just realized that one of the other projects I'm about to cast on is still downstairs. I just cast it on. I didn't even bring it up though, which is just a dog sweater. I downloaded this pattern from Etsy specifically for mini dachshunds, because as everybody probably knows if you follow me on Instagram, because I post about them constantly, I have 2 mini dachshunds and a mixed breed dog who very much has a dachshund shape to her body, and she has a bunch of breeds in her. And so I'm making them all sweaters for this coming winter in that pattern. What else do I have? I'll do the other one I'm going to do that's somebody else's pattern, and then talk about the upcoming projects I have that are my own designs that will be published soon. So I'm working, and then I'll talk about needlepoint and cross stitch. So I'm casting on the Harvest cardigan by Tin Can Knits for my spouse, but I'm going to alter it a little bit. It's going to actually be a vest. I'm not going to do the sleeves. I'm going to bind off the sleeves when I get to that step. I might do a couple rows of ribbing. It depends on how the fabric looks by that point. I'm not really sure how that's going to work out. And I'm doing that in this. I do not remember what this is off the top of my head, but I know I have it written down. I don't think I have any of the labels left. This is the yarn that, if you watched a video about 2 years ago or so, I had done an entire front panel and half of a second panel, and I ended up frogging the entire project, and it had cabling down the front because I realized that it just wasn't working for me. I was never going to finish it. It was going to sit in my yarn bag forever if I didn't do something else with the yarn. So now I've got it all balled back up, and I'm going to do that Harvest sweater, and I'm going to do a Tree of Life pocket, I think, on the front. I'm using the Harvest pattern because the Tin Can Knits patterns are one of the few that I can reliably count on to go up to my spouse's size. She's a bigger person, and that is one of the few that will go up to a big enough size for them. So that is going to be cast on probably tonight, actually. That'll probably be my evening TV watching cast on project will be that one. And then I'll do I think it's is it Elizabeth Zimmerman who did that Tree of Life cabled Tree of Life. You know, you've seen it. It's everywhere. The cabled Tree of Life chart. I think that's everything that I have on the needles at the moment. Before I move on to my cross stitch stuff, I will talk about what I have upcoming for patterns. My goal was to have my Good Witch gauntlets out in June. However, everything that happened in May with the medical situation with my family member it's kind of slowed me down. The pattern is almost completely written. I haven't gotten it to any test knitters yet. It's probably not going to be done until July, unfortunately. It is what it is. So my goal was originally to have those out in June, this next pattern I'm going to talk about out in July, and then my pumpkin socks out in August. This one I was aiming for July. It may end up later in the fall. It may end up next summer, honestly. But that's going to be in this. I'm so excited to work with this yarn. This will be my second time working with this yarn. I bought, I think, 3 skeins of it when I picked it up. And then I had this idea for this pattern that honestly, this is the one I'm the most excited about. And I hate that I'm not going to have it out on time. But the Good Witch gauntlets have been waiting. The Good Witch gauntlets have been waiting for so long that the yarn dyer who did the yarn that I used in the original pair has closed her shop. That's how long they've been waiting. So that's my upcoming patterns. And then in August, I have a pair of pumpkin socks. I'm trying to get them out. Maybe that's the key. Maybe I push this pair to August and the pumpkin socks to September. Because the pumpkin socks, they are obviously intended for harvest time. That's why I plan to get them out in August. They're so cute. You guys are going to love them. And then also in the fall, I'm working with Woolly Witch of the West, who is one of my dear friends. She's been on my podcast. She's really sweet. She does a lot of yarn dyeing with natural objects that she finds in her woods around her house. My brain wants to say Montana. My mouth wants to say Wyoming. It's one of those 2 states. So I'm working with her on a shawl pattern that will also be out this fall. So those are my kind of design projects that are going on. That is everything. I think that is everything knitting related that I have going on. So if that's all you care about, this would be where I leave you. But I'm going to talk about cross stitch and embroidery because I've got a couple of little projects that I've started with those. I can't remember when I started this first one. I believe it was sometime in 2020. Maybe 2021. It must have been 2021. Yeah, it was 2021. It's almost done. There's some beaded bits. So I'll show you. Oh, I need to tighten it's come loose in the embroidery hoop. So this is the design. I need to do I've done women. I need to do this part up here where it says women. I got a little bit left on the letters. So here's my thing with this pattern. This is what the cover looks like. It's hard to see on there, but it's got I got some embroidery there on the heel of that shoe and the heel of that shoe, the pink shoes, the yellow shoes. It's got some beads scattered through there. The hair. Women inspire women. That's all embroidered. The rest of it is not. However, it could be. I easily could do that. I don't even know what the directions say for it. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't say... I think you could kind of just decide how much of it you wanted to embroider and how much you wanted to just leave the print. And I can't decide if I want to go the whole way or if I want to do it more like what it is on the cover. They provide enough embroidery thread, plus I have my own embroidery thread, that I easily could go the whole way. I just can't decide if that's what I want to do. So that project has kind of just been sitting aside, waiting while I make up my mind on it. but I really just need to buckle down and finish it. It's to hang in here in my office. And then the other thing I started, I haven't gotten very far. As you can see, I have one little bit there. I just started this one. This was a gift from my best friend Cassie, and I'm really excited about it. I'm gonna hang it in my laundry room. Laundry today or naked tomorrow. I love it. Makes me laugh. So that's a cross stitch pattern. The other one's embroidery. This one's a cross stitch pattern. I have not done cross stitch since probably the 5th grade. I used to do it quite a bit as a kid. Haven't done it since. Really excited to do that one. I think it's going to be really cute hanging in my laundry room. I think I'm actually going to hang it like in the embroidery hoop too, instead of like framing it or anything. I think I'm going to hang it in the embroidery hoop because I like that crafty, partially finished feel of that. So those are my 2 stitching projects I'm working on. I have a really hard time finding time to work on them because of my cat Echo. She's very unpredictable. She jumps in my lap at unpredictable times, and anything that's hand sewing, I have a hard time with. Maybe what I need to do is keep those in my office, actually. Maybe those need to stay up here and be like things I work on during meetings instead of my sock yarn blanket, which has always been my kind of desk project. We'll see. But anyway, that's those. The last thing I have for you, oh, we haven't talked about books yet. Let's talk about books. So in the month of May, I did a couple of things different. This is going to be a really long vloggy, podcasty episode, whatever this is. But we haven't talked about books and we haven't talked about music. So I want to talk about music a little bit. I think so many years of having all of our music digital has gotten me into this really interesting habit of listening to everything on shuffle. And I'm not entirely happy with that lifestyle. I was talking to a friend who's currently recording a musical album, and he was talking about how he was trying to decide if this song should be second on the album or if this one should. And it really got me thinking about how artists put a lot of thought into that. It's very intentional, the order of the music. And we, the consumer, so often listen on shuffle. Or we listen to it on a playlist and we've just taken like 2 or 3 songs off the album and put it on the playlist. So I really wanted to focus on my energy, and I've kind of been making a conscious effort to listen to an album from start to finish in order instead of like throwing certain songs out and ignoring the rest. So one way I've been doing this is through my Hoopla account, which is through my library. You can download a certain number of movies, music, TV, and books each, and audiobooks and graphic novels. Like, they have everything on Hoopla. It's great. But you can download a certain number each month. It's really awesome. I love it. So on there I downloaded Dolly Parton's Blue Smoke album, which is from, I want to say, 2014, 2016. Something like that. I listened to that for about a week. I also listened to Jon Batiste's We Are album, which just won Album of the Year at the Grammys this year. So good. Oh my gosh. That album I just was hooked on. Like, once I'd listened to it straight through, I was like, now I just want to do it again anyway. And I just played it on repeat for a week straight. And then the other one I got really hooked on last month was Taylor Swift's Folklore album, which I realized, like, I'm a couple years late. I know I had listened to it when it came out because of the song Cardigan. Everybody in the knitting world was talking about the album, right? So I'd listened to it when it came out, but I kind of did a revisit of it. I listened to that for about a week straight and loved it. I loved it. Now I'm on to the Linda Lindas, so I'll talk about them more next month, but that's my current listen is the Linda Lindas, who I didn't even know existed. I saw them on some late night TV show, Jimmy Fallon or one of those, and I was like, oh my god, why didn't anybody tell me about them? They're like Bikini Kill for 2022. Like, that's what they feel like. They feel like the modern Bikini Kill, the modern younger, I don't know. I just love them. I love Bikini Kill and I love the Linda Lindas. I'm absolutely loving them. So, that's my music. Let's talk books. In the month of May, I finished 5 books in the month of May. The first one I finished was Letters to a Young Writer by Colin McCann. This is like a kind of an ode to letters to a young poet. It's just little vignettes, little tiny letters. Little tiny letters telling a young writer everything they need to know about the writing world from an experienced author. It's really sweet. It was a gift somebody gave me a few years ago, knowing that I'm a writer. And it's just a really sweet little collection of letters. I enjoyed it. It was very good. I read, which order I guess I'll do these in the order I read them. I read Disasterology, Dispatches from the Front Lines of the Climate Crisis by Dr. Samantha Montano. Samantha Montano is a friend of mine. We worked together on a campaign back in 2011. We did some canvassing together. She is absolutely brilliant and has created an interest in disasters for me that both feeds my anxiety and heals it at the same time. She's interesting. She's a very fascinating person. She studies our approach to disasters through lenses of social justice, through the lens of racism, through the lens of sexism, through the lens of classism, how all of those things come into play with things like our response to Hurricane Katrina, our response to the BP oil crisis, oil spill, our response to COVID-19. She really looks at how all of these things work together. And I wish I had the quote in front of me. I don't think I have my reading journal up here. I do have my reading journal. So let me just throw that quote in here real quick. From Disasterology, she said, "Intersectional activism is the only way we survive the climate crisis." That's kind of, I would say, her thesis, so to speak, of this book. It's part memoir about how she became a disasterologist, how she began in this study. And then it's also like a science, it's got a lot of like the science and the sociology around disasters, and how all of that works. Flooding and all, it's fascinating. It's an absolutely fascinating book. I did that one as an audiobook. I started it as a paper book about a year ago when it first came out, and maybe I'm jumping the timeline there. It might not have been out that long. I started it as a paper book when it came out anyway, whenever that was, and realized that at that point, with everything going on in the world with COVID-19, I was not in the headspace to handle it. So I've now returned to it and read the whole thing and loved it. I want to mail a copy of it to every elected official in the country. I feel like if you are in any decision-making position, if you're in any sort of position of power over other people, you should be reading Disasterology. And if you have no power, you should be reading Disasterology to know what the people in power should be doing and push them toward it politically. So Disasterology, Dispatches from the Front Lines of a Climate Crisis by Samantha Montano, Dr. Samantha Montano. She also has a TED Talk out, if you want to find that on YouTube, that kind of summarizes some of the main points of it. But it's a fascinating book. I highly suggest it. After that, I read Hooked. This one I read on paper. Hooked, How Crafting Saved My Life by Sutton Foster. So Sutton Foster is a Broadway and television star and film star. Hooked is like a memoir of her crafting journey. It reminded me a lot of what you hear from Gay Glaspie and a lot of these kind of knitting influencers who talk about how knitting benefited them on a different level than just the actual creation of art, like how it benefited them psychologically and socially. So there's a lot of that, how she worked through her anxiety, her social anxiety, her various mental health issues through crochet mostly, but also through other kinds of art. It's a fantastic book. Highly suggest it. The next two books, I don't know if I can suggest them, and I have a really hard time critiquing them. I have very mixed feelings about both of these books. I read The Shop on Blossom Street by Debbie Maycomer. That one was an audiobook. I didn't love it. It's the first in a series, and I probably won't return to the rest of the series, so that's how much I didn't love it. But I also was really invested in these characters. But on both of these books, like when I put them on Goodreads, I said I don't know what to give these for star ratings, because although I wasn't a big fan of them, I cannot say this is good literature. I mean, we don't expect good literature necessarily out of knitting, casual knitting novels. I can't say that this is great literature or that this is like timeless and everybody should read it. If you're looking for a cozy book that primarily takes place in a knitting or yarn shop, in a local yarn shop, that's what you're gonna get. The characters are not always well developed. They're a little bit flat. in places. The plot line doesn't always make sense. Some things tie up in some ways that feel a little bit too easy to me. Like if I had it in a workshop, if I was sitting down in a writing workshop, I'd have said, you need to work toward this ending a little bit more because it just kind of ties up too perfectly. That kind of thing. But like I said, I was completely invested. I couldn't put it down. So that goes for The Shop on Blossom Street by Debbie May. And then I also read Knit One, Kill Two by Maggie Sefton. And I have the exact same feelings about that one. Like I couldn't put it down. It was a very good, cozy read. It was exactly what I wanted. However, I was constantly frustrated with the dialogue. I was constantly frustrated with characters that didn't make sense. The one that stands out to me is there's one character in like the second to last chapter of Knit One, Kill Two, who says, you don't think he'd hurt her, do you? Talking about the fact that the main character is about to go confront the man who she's pretty sure committed a double homicide. Yeah, he won't hurt her. What kind of line is that? What kind of dialogue is that? Drove me nuts. But then, like I said, I was completely invested. Couldn't put them down. I read Knit One, Kill Two in 3 days. And that was a paper book. So it wasn't even audiobooks I can read in 3 days. Paper books, not so much. I read that one in 3 days. Paper book. A physical paperback in my hand. Could not put it down. And yet, I was routinely frustrated by it. So I don't know how to gauge these ones. This is why I'm not a book reviewer so much as just a book consumer. Because I just can't say. I can't say. If you're looking for a cozy mystery, something easy that's like easy to follow, doesn't have a lot of depth, but will actually just give you like a good little escapist book to read, Knit One, Kill Two. That's exactly what I'd go for. The Shop on Blossom Street, if you're looking for something a little bit more emotional but has that same cozy feel, local yarn store environment. Debbie May, Shop on Blossom Street. I read the Friday Night Knitting Club and all of the collection of Friday Night Knitting Club books by Kate Jacobs. I have them on the shelf over there. Those books I loved and can honestly say I felt were extremely well written. These books I did not feel that way about. I enjoyed them. I didn't love them. So take that as you will. I don't know. Like I said, this is why I'm a book consumer more than a book reviewer. But I do like to talk about what I've read. So those are the books that I read in May. I think I've covered everything. Finished items. Hey Brownberry. I'm going to get started on these next projects. Hopefully I'll have the Good Witch Gauntlets out soon, that pattern out soon. Just keep an eye on Instagram for it. One of the other things I'm hoping to record today is a Patreon video. I've been talking about this for a while. I need to record a new video about how I want to configure my Patreon. So keep an eye out for that. And my bullet journal video was out last week, if you're into that. I'm doing Bridgerton as my theme for this month for my bullet journal. I think next month I'm actually just going to do yarn. Like I'm going to do a knitting themed one. I haven't done that yet and I really want to. So I think that's going to be my July. But for June I'm doing Bridgerton. I'm going to be on an airplane in a couple of weeks, so I'll probably need to start a new project that'll be just an airplane project too. We'll see. So that's everything I think that's going on. If you like it, like, subscribe, do all those things. Answer me down below really about the podcast versus vlog thing. I'm really curious how people see these two words. What's the difference? What's the difference between a podcast and a vlog? I'd love to hear your comments down below. And let me know what music you're listening to, because I've created a list of albums that I want to do this with. I'm just going to spend a week with each album. So I'd love to hear if there's an album that I need to add to that list. The list that I have going has a huge variety to it. Huge. There is no album off limits. Just tell me what you're listening to. I'd love to know. That's everything I have for you. Go make something fun. Go get out and enjoy some good weather I hope you're having at your place too. And I will talk to you soon.